Welcome back to Law and Crime, everybody. I'm Jesse Weber, and thanks for joining us here on Killer Love Recap Day, where we're recapping some of the most interesting cases where love played a critical role. And let's talk right now about Chris Watts. Now, Chris Watts really became popular in the news when his wife and two daughters disappeared. Of course, I'm talking about Shanann Watts, who was 15 weeks pregnant with their son Nico at the time of her disappearance, as well as Bella, 4 years old, and 3-year-old Celeste. Now, we know that Chris Watts became a person of interest, and I want to start right now with his interrogation tape. Take a look.
He did not pass the polygraph test. Okay. So now we need to talk about what actually happened. And I feel like you're probably ready to do that.
I didn't lie to you on that polygraph, I promise.
Chris,
I'm
Chris, stop. It's time. Just stop for a minute. Take a deep breath. I want you to take a deep breath right now.
I didn't do anything to hurt the kids.
Was it an accident?
I didn't do anything.
Was it an accident?
There was no accident. I don't know if there was an accident in the house. I wasn't there for it.
It's a big deal if it's an accident, because we can work with that, Chris.
No,
That's maybe what happened.
I did not call it an accident. I didn't do anything to my wife and kids.
Was it a misunderstanding?
There's no misunderstanding. Like, we had a talk. There was a misunderstanding where I didn't tell her about the affair.
Did Shanann do something?
Look at them.
I know. Before you came in, I was watching videos.
We have no doubt you love these girls with all of your heart. And no doubt. But we make mistakes.
That's okay.
It's what we do with those mistakes that make us who we are.
Chris, it seems like you're thinking about it right now. What are you thinking about?
She couldn't have.
I feel like you cleaned up for her. I feel like that's the type of guy that you are.
All right, so this is part one in the Chris Watts saga. I want to bring back in criminal defense attorney Randy Zelin. Randy, why is his attorney not present with him during this interrogation tape?
Man, I wish I had an answer to that question, because getting back to my hook, if I had a hook, I would yank him out of that room so fast. And by the way, this is important for your viewers to know. I talk as a criminal defense attorney. I don't talk as a human being. I don't talk as a father. It's very important, and sometimes people lose that. And when I am so cold and just giving advice and dispensing advice, that's my job. And my job is to protect my client. And here, what you're watching is the unraveling of a human being by sophisticated, well-trained detectives. They do good cop, bad cop. We just want to help you. Let's get this off your chest. We can work with this. We're all human. They're not his friends. They're not there to help him. The second, if he should confess, the second he does, they are going to barbecue him. And they are perfectly allowed to do that. They're allowed to lie to him. They're allowed to deceive him. They are allowed to do just about anything to get what they want, which is a confession, which is why you never, ever walk in and allow yourself to be interrogated by law enforcement, A, without your attorney, and B, probably ever, because it's rare that a defense attorney would permit the interrogation unless there was an understanding, an agreement, a deal that had been cut beforehand.
Is the idea what you see a lot of times? I mean, why did he give that porch interview, which we'll talk about a little bit later? Why is he in this? Is it the idea of, hey, I got nothing to hide. I'm just going to be honest and say something?
Again, we can only talk ourselves into trouble as human beings. And what is human nature? Human nature is I can talk my way out of it. Human nature is if I keep my mouth shut, and it's bizarre because we don't take advantage of the Constitution, the right to remain silent.
The investigators first look at the person closest to the family, right? Why is that? I mean, we're talking about killer love here today. Why is it the person, the mother, the father, that they first look at, the husband, the wife?
Studies have shown that more often than not, when there is a homicide, it's probably someone very closely related. It's far less common that it's a stranger, particularly in a situation like this where there are children involved and there is a wife and children who have all vanished. Odds are it was not some random act by a stranger who knocked on a door, found the door open, and pulled these people out of the house.
Well, before we go to our break, we are going to let you know that when we come back, we're going to play you his first version of events. He's going to explain what ultimately happened, his first version. The question is, though, in general, do people want to change their lives? Do they think that, hey, if I commit this crime, if I do something, everything will be okay? Is that the mindset?
Well, if I answer the question too well, then that would suggest that I'm probably more of a criminal and less of a criminal defense attorney. But based upon my 30 years of experience in doing this, first of all, there's no one-size-fits-all answer. I think human nature, again, we want to talk ourselves out of a problem. Yes, there are these knee-jerk, instantaneous decisions that we make. That's why we have heat of passion as a mitigating circumstance in a case.
Okay, well, Randy, stand by. Viewers, stand by. When we come back, you're going to hear the first version of events from Chris Watts. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everybody. Where we last left off, we were covering the Chris Watts interrogation tape. Let's continue on, and I'll tell you right now, this is the first story or lie that he told. Take a look.
Anything else you want to tell me? What's going on, or what happened, or anything? Or you know anything about?
When we had that conversation that morning, it was emotional. It was told her about separation and everything like that.
Mm-hmm. What happened after that?
I mean, I went downstairs and I want to protect her.
What?
I want to protect her.
You don't want to protect her?
I don't know what else to say.
What happened? Huh? She hurt him?
Yeah. And then I
What now?
thought about her.
You hurt her. Did they leave after that, or what happened? So she started hurting the kids.
Every
How old are you guys on now? What? She smothered him. Or choked him. No.
I didn't hear anything. And then when I was downstairs, they came back up and they were gone. I don't know, like me talking to her about that. Talking to her about separation and everything, about
And she lost it.
I don't know, like, what else to say, like, I freaked out. Those are my kids.
She freaked out over the separation of them.
Like, she laid like down, but that's when I went downstairs, but I heard like a little commotion upstairs, but I didn't think anything of it.
Mm-hmm. And then you went back upstairs and she was,
Never, I could see, like, she was on top of me.
choking her or did she kill her?
They're blue.
Both of them.
Yes.
She choked both of them to death.
I freaked out in the champagne. How do I say that? I might call the cops about it.
So we could do all the bodies off or something?
I mean, I didn't know what else to do. I freaked out. I didn't know nothing else to do. I didn't know what to do.
So she killed Lucy Steven, choked him to death.
Okay. Randy, the first version of events is he killed her because she killed the kids. But we've seen that happen before. Would that have been a successful defense for him?
If you were looking at it from a pure strategic outcome standpoint, absolutely. Because here, with this version, she killed them, I killed her. You've got the defense or the mitigating circumstance of heat of passion, which takes your intentional murder and turns it into a manslaughter case, which is a far more manageable case for a defense attorney. And depending on the manner of her death, you may even be able to bump it down further to a negligent homicide, meaning I didn't perceive the risk that I would kill her. Again, far more manageable. And if you really wanted to go for the brass ring, you could almost argue justification defense of others, but let's assume you're pushing your luck. But certainly it would be far more manageable.
Okay, so he admitted, though, that he killed her. Let's see the reaction from Shanann's family when they spoke at his sentencing. I want to begin with Frank Ruzek. Again, this is Shanann's father, and he is the grandfather of Bella and Celeste. Take a look.
You monster. Thought you would get away with this. I don't know how. The cameras do not lie. You carry them out like trash of the house. Yes. I seen the videotape. You buried my daughter Shannon and Nico in a shallow grave. And then you put Bella and Celeste in huge containers of crude oil. You heartless monster. You have to live with this vision every day of your life, and I hope you see that every time you close your eyes at night. Oh, I forgot. You have no heart or feelings or love. Let me tell you something. I will think of them every day of my life, and I love them every day of my life. Prison is too good for you. This is hard to say, but may God have mercy on your soul. I hope you enjoy your new life. It's nothing like the one you had out here. May the courts have no mercy on you. It's hard every day. It hurts in so many ways.
Your daughter Bella Marie sang a song proudly. And I don't know if you got to see it, but it was Daddy, You're My Hero. I have no idea who gave you the right to take their lives. You took your own life. I want the world to know that our daughter and her children were so loved by us. They will always be protected by God and his mighty angels. I didn't want death for you because that's not my right. Your life is between you and God now, and I pray that he has mercy for you. From Shannon's mother, Bella Marie, Celeste Catherine, and Nico Lee's Nana. Thank you, Your Honor.
Clearly, that first confession that he just killed Shanann because she killed the babies, that didn't last much long. He pled guilty to slaying his entire family, and that was his sentence. I want to talk with Randy Zelin about this. I guess my first question is, how could someone do this?
I was thinking that same question while I was watching the parents. It is almost not human to not have a reaction where you want to jump through the TV and strangle this guy for what he's done.
Yeah.
And that's me talking as a human being. But at the same time, I find myself thinking, how did we get here? Where have we gone wrong as a society? Where have we gone wrong as citizens? Where have we gone wrong as humans where a human being, and her mom talked about freedom of choice and free will. We all have free will. And the thing that separates us from animals, one of the things, is the ability to make a choice and the ability to think about the consequences of our actions. Where do we go wrong?
That's a great question. I wish I had an answer for you, but I don't. You know, we're listening to the family speak at the sentencing, but that's not the only voice I want you to hear from. When we come back, the question is, what did the district attorney, Michael Rourke, have to say? Stay tuned. Welcome back, everybody. We're continuing to break down and analyze the Chris Watts case. Where we last left off, we heard the statements from Shanann's father and mother during Chris Watts' sentencing hearing. Let's now listen to the district attorney, Michael Rourke, because he had some choice words for Chris Watts. Take a look.
Your Honor, there are no words to adequately describe the unimaginable tragedy that brings us before this court today. By my comments, I'm not even going to try to express the horror, the pain, or the suffering that the defendant has caused to these families, to this community, and to all who were a part of this investigation. However, I do want to spend a few minutes sharing with the court the details of the crime, as so far you've only had an opportunity to review the affidavit and a few facts here and there that have been offered to the court in the motions and pleadings that have been filed. The questions that have screamed out to anyone who will listen since August 13th of 2018 are why and how. Why did this have to happen? How could a seemingly normal husband and father annihilate his entire family? For what? These are the questions that only one individual in this courtroom or on this planet knows the answers to. I fully expect we will not receive the answers to these questions today, nor will we at any point in the future. I don't expect that he will ever tell the truth about what truly happened or why. Even if he did, there is no rational way that any human being could find those answers acceptable responses to such horrific questions. The best we can do is try to piece together some kind of understanding from the evidence that is available to us. And the evidence tells us this. The defendant coldly and deliberately ended 4 lives. Not in a fit of rage, not by way of accident, but in a calculated and sickening manner. Shanann was 34 years old. She had married the defendant in November of 2012. Over the weekend leading up to August 13th, she had been at a work conference in Phoenix, Arizona, and returned home in the early morning hours of August 13th. We know that she got home about 1:45 in the morning. The doorbell camera on their home shows her arriving back home from the airport. Shortly thereafter, at least according to the defendant, they had what he referred to as an emotional conversation about the state of their marriage and about what their lives would look like going forward. What was said during that emotional conversation, only he knows. What we do know is that shortly after that, the defendant strangled her to death with his own hands. We know that he slowly took her life the morning of August 13th. We know that this was not done in an uncontrolled, vengeful manner that he tried to describe to agents from CBI and the FBI. If that were the case, you would expect to see vicious, horrible bruising about her neck, shoulders, and face. You would expect to see the hyoid bone in her neck broken. You would expect to see some kind of defensive wounds on his body as she struggled and fought for her own life. None of those are present. The only injuries that were on Shanann's body were one set of finger or bruising, what appeared to be fingernail or finger mark bruising to the right side of her neck. We know that our experts will tell us that it takes 2 to 4 minutes to strangle someone to death manually with their own hands. The horror that she felt as the man that she loved wrapped his hands around her throat and choked the life out of her must have been unimaginable. Even worse, what must Bella, age 4, and Celeste, age 3, must have experienced or thought as their father, the one man on this planet who was supposed to nurture and protect them, was snuffing out their lives. They both died from smothering Let me say that again. The man seated to my right smothered his daughters. Why? Imagine the horror in Bella's mind as her father took her last breaths away. Your Honor, understand very clearly, Bella fought back for her life. The frenulum, the connective tissue between her upper lip and her gum, had a centimeter and a half laceration. She bit her tongue multiple times before she died. She fought back for her life as her father smothered her.
That's the district attorney speaking to the judge during the sentencing phase, because that judge will be the one who sentences Chris Watts. We'll reveal that a little bit later on. Randy, you were making an interesting point to me as we're watching this. The fact that Chris Watts pled guilty, you feel this statement, and correct me if I'm wrong, of Michael Rourke is unnecessary.
That is unfair to things that are unnecessary. The reality is a prosecutor gets up and makes an argument when there is a disagreement over what the sentence will be. If nobody knows what the sentence is going to be, you argue why a certain sentence is appropriate, because typically the defense and the prosecution don't agree. But in a situation where it's pretty much understood what's going on here and what's going to happen here, why are you doing this? My reaction, my visceral reaction watching this, aside from why are you torturing the family, is it is your way of apologizing to anyone who thinks that you should not have given this defendant ice in the wintertime. It's, again, human nature. We talk. It is maybe the district attorney's own his own sense of guilt that I actually gave this man some kind of a break, as opposed to...
Is life in prison a break, though?
Well, as opposed to the death penalty?
Well, that's a question. I'm always curious about that. What's a worse life for him?
I got to tell you, I've never been dead, so I don't know what it's like, nor have I ever been faced with dying, but my sense of it is I can't really see anybody wanting to die, even if you think that dying is better than spending the rest of your life in jail. When you're dead, man, that's it.
And maybe the idea that you're on death row, knowing that'll eventually happen. And I've been told that being on death row is very different than a life in prison. It's from a practical point of view, it's two different kinds of lives.
Correct.
Yeah, so it's interesting to see. Here's what I want to do, though. I want to go now to Chris Watts' interrogation video. Let's play a little bit more of this, because the details of this saga kept coming forward, including this tape, which was released to the public. Take a look.
Get him out there.
In the truck.
Which part?
Truck is over here.
In the passenger compartment?
Travis said, you're cracked my seat.
What do you think is on the way out there?
There's... And the babies are gone. And I put my hands around my wife's neck and did that same thing.
Did Shanann fight back at all when you did that?
The rage that I had after seeing that, like, not much.
How do you know Shanann was dead?
So, Randy, I thought that was interesting that they brought the father in, Chris Watts' father, which helped elicit this first confession that he killed Shanann. I mean, obviously that wasn't true that he just killed Shanann. He slayed the whole family. But the idea of bringing a family member in, have you seen that happen before?
Absolutely. Listen, it's by any means necessary. They are not his friend. Law enforcement are not trying to befriend Chris Watts. They're not trying to help him. They're trying to get a confession so they can present a file to a prosecutor with a bow on it. There's nothing to do in this case. You get that in there because you've already cracked him.
Mm-hmm. They knew they had him.
Now you finish it.
Why do you think he pled guilty in the sense and not even tried to take this to a trial?
Look, we don't know what goes on behind the scenes, but again, assuming that there was something to negotiate, like I'll take a plea, you don't put me on death row, hey, if you don't want to die, that's a pretty powerful incentive.
Can you imagine in a world where he would take the stand after watching him in this interrogation tape, after watching him do that Porsche interview? Imagine him taking the stand, what that would have been like.
Yes, but only if, again, he has this awful confrontation with his wife. She dies. He picks up the phone and calls his attorney and says, my God, what do I do? Then maybe, or maybe the case never goes to trial because you can negotiate a disposition based upon a heat of passion, a manslaughter, and he could go on with his life. His children could go on with their lives. Yes, scarred, damaged, absolutely. But better than this.
And I mean, that first story that he killed Shanann out of rage because she killed the baby, that she killed the young girls, that wouldn't have flown because why did he transport the bodies? And according to your scenario, if he really did that and left the bodies where they were, could have maybe created that reasonable doubt. But what you said so well is his actions afterward really what sealed the deal for him.
And we see it time and time again. It's not what you do. It's what you do afterwards to cover it up, to make the story work. You don't have a target and someone shoots an arrow at it. You shoot the arrow first and now you have to create the target around it. And more often than not in our business, that is what your client's undoing ends up to be.
And very similar to other cases that we've covered here on the network, Chris Watts led police to the location of the bodies of his family members. When we come back, we'll show you that. So, after many lies, Chris Watts finally revealed to police the location of the bodies of his family members. And this is what happened during his interrogation tape, which was released to the public and we all saw. I want to play that for you right now.
PRC surgery 319.
Okay. Whereabouts is Shanann and the girls?
How old is this picture?
Today.
That's today.
Okay, can you mark it for me? Thanks. I think it's the paper. It's just for me, Is that S for Shanann? Okay, and where are the girls at?
Here.
In these? So which one is, do you know which one?
Are they in the tanks? Can somebody who doesn't know what they're doing open those? Okay, it's easy to open.
What's in the tanks?
It's a mixture of oil and water.
So was there a sheet found down here?
Mm-hmm.
Where's that from?
That was what Shanann was wrapped in.
What about the girls? What were they wrapped in? Just in the pajamas? None of their blankets or anything? Where did their blankets and toys and stuff go?
Probably flew away in the wind or something right here.
Where did you set them or put them?
It was right here with that.
So how did you dig this out? I'm assuming that's under dirt. How did you dig that?
So a shovel in my truck still with it.
It's like a work shovel. Is it still there? How was Shanann touched?
Shirt and underwear.
So it sounds like, it feels like to me, now we know pretty well how to go get them. Is there anything else we need to know? how to get them? Yeah. Does someone have to climb up to the top and unscrew something and then lower something down to get them? They're like, it's just a hatch on the top, and they're like 20-foot tanks. How far down are they? Wherever the food level is in the tank, I'm not sure. Okay. What was it when you were there? I don't know. I didn't. Okay. I wasn't looking for that. Okay. All right. You need to go out there or no? I don't think so. Would you prefer not to? I didn't know if you needed help getting there. Yeah, I don't know. I think once we got that picture, because we didn't really know how much about the location that the other police officers knew, but it sounds like they knew somehow right how to get to 319. So, and I think that's how they got that picture.
So he buries his wife in a shallow graves and dumps his 2 girls in oil tankers. Nice. Let's continue on with his interrogation tape.
Is it possible that when we get these girls, Bella, Cece, and Shanann, is it possible when we get them that we're going to see anything other than the cause of death being her hands? Okay. And what I mean by that, and I should be very clear, is that some of it's hard to believe that your wife did it, right? You can imagine that. Okay. So is it possible that maybe she did one, and then you got Shanann, so you did to Shanann what she did to one of your daughters, and then you had to just do it to the other one? Okay. So is there, that's not what happened? Okay. Is it possible that, is there any other way where we might see your hands on the girl's neck? No. Okay. And you know what I mean? Because when we find their little bodies, we're going to see the diameter of someone's hand and someone's fingers, right? So is it at all possible we're going to see yours? Okay.
And that confession is what ultimately led investigators to the bodies. Randy, as we're watching this, you can't help but think about what the motive here was. He was having an affair with this woman. Did he really believe that by getting rid of his family, he could live a nice, happy life with his mistress?
Well, that assumes that he was thinking about what he was doing and that there was any rational brain function going on in that minute. And again, neither you nor I, and probably none of your viewers, could ever begin to understand the mindset of someone with the capability of killing his entire family.
That's a great point. Now, what we've been previewing the whole time is his sentence. Let's finally see what Chris Watts was sentenced to. Take a look.
Attorneys, the court has considered the statements made by the victims in this case. The court's going to find that the plea agreement is fair and reasonable under the circumstances. I want to acknowledge the Rusick family as well as the Watts family that showing mercy on Mr. Watts is understood. And I respect that decision to request that the district attorney not seek the death penalty in this case. And so the court is going to accept this plea bargain under the circumstances. Words that come to mind when I hear the evidence in this case are a senseless crime and the viciousness of the crime. And equally aggravating in this court's determination is the despicable act of disposing of the bodies in the manner in which they were done in this case. I've been a judicial officer now for starting my 17th year, and I could objectively say that this is perhaps the most inhumane and vicious crime that I have handled out of the thousands of cases that I have seen. And nothing less than a maximum sentence would be appropriate, and anything less than the maximum sentence would depreciate the seriousness of this offense. So the court is going to sentence Mr. Watts as follows.
So they ultimately sentenced him to 5 life sentences in prison. He's never getting out again, Randy. But his life has been kind of weird. Hasn't he been transferred to a Wisconsin prison and because of security concerns? Like, what does the remainder of his life look like?
Awful. And you said earlier, maybe death is an easier way out. There is a code in jail. It's a society, like any other society. And a jail and the prison population has its own set of rules and its own way of exacting justice. And there are certain crimes that are not okay. Killing a child in the prison system is really bad. He is going to have a horrible life, assuming he has much of a life in jail, because he wouldn't be the first person to be found dead, either by his own hands or by someone else's.
And there's going to be a lot of people who think that he deserves that, and that may be his fate. Again, he has been moved to a different prison out of state because of security concerns. But Randy, thanks so much for coming on and speaking about our cases today. It was a pleasure having you.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. All right, everybody. I am going to be signing off, but Mike O'Brien is signing in, and he's going to be hosting for the next couple of hours and guiding you through 2 other cases here on Killer Love Day on Law and Crime. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.